Hello everybody, welcome to our next module in the Advanced Diploma of Christian Ministry and Theology for 2018. This one is on coaching and motivation. It might seem like a simple task, and in many ways it is. Coaching and motivating, training people to do things is one of the things we do naturally and instinctively. It's not like there's a lot of material in the Bible explaining it. It's not a deeply spiritual skill. It's something you need in all sorts of workplaces, in all sorts of aspects of life. But it is the case that there are better and worse ways to do it. And it is the case that there are mistakes you can make that make it easier. One of the things about being a minister is having some facility with some of these skills, particularly these interpersonal skills that help you just bring people into new roles better. So the aim of this unit is to teach you about coaching and motivation. There's an excellent reading, a Grove booklet on coaching in the church, and your assignment involves practically coaching somebody through a skill and then reflecting on it. And you need to actually do that in your church setting. What kind of skill are you going to do it in relation to? It could be a complicated skill like leading a band. It could be a simple skill like reading the Bible. For the purposes of the assignment, I'd recommend sticking with a fairly simple skill that you can contain and focus on. I know a lot of you are already good at things like coaching, but the discipline of taking yourself slowly through a coaching process will be very valuable. And you will learn things and you'll notice things you haven't noticed before. And you'll pick up on aspects of the process that perhaps you've never thought about before or could do better at. I'd like to just take you through the basics of how you think about and how you do coaching right now. In its most simple form, coaching has three components. Coaching somebody to do something has three components. First, you need to prepare for coaching. So you need to do what's needed to get ready for coaching. Secondly, you need to actually do the coaching. And then thirdly, you need to follow up on the coaching. Okay, now that super simple way to summarize it, but there are different things to think about at each of those steps. So let's think firstly about preparing for coaching of some skill or competency. For the purposes of this explanation, I'm going to imagine that what I'm preparing to do is to teach somebody to operate a sound desk in the church. I can't operate a sound desk in the church, so I'm imagining myself into it, but it will help us get the basics. Coaching emerges from an identified need. And the first thing in the coaching process is to identify a need for coaching. Now that can happen through a range of factors. If somebody, for example, told you that they were happy to help a church and they were happy to work the sound desk, but they had no idea how to do it, you'd know they needed coaching. Another way, though, a need for coaching might come up would be if somebody was working the sound desk, but they clearly didn't know how to do it. Turning the wrong knobs, getting all the feedback, you'd know pretty quickly. So a range of factors might allow you to identify a need for coaching. The next thing to do in preparing for coaching is to have a discussion with the person. You need to talk to them to find out where they think they need coaching. Clarify to them where you think they need coaching, because if you're not on the same page, it's not going to work. One of the ways coaching goes wrong is where there's a mismatch between the expectations of the person being coached and the person doing the coaching. You can't stealth coach someone. Well, perhaps you can, but it's normally pretty problematic. By far the best way to do coaching is for you and the person being coached to reach a kind of accord about where they need help. Now, that's tricky because people don't always know what they don't know, but sometimes they will be able to identify it. Sometimes you'll have to show it to them. If they're on the sound desk, and so we imagine Betty Davis is the person I'm coaching on the sound desk, and she's just started and she clearly doesn't know how to do it from my point of view, and she thinks she doesn't know how to do it because it sounds terrible. But there's a whole lot of things she probably thinks she does know how to do, but I know as a sound desk expert that she doesn't yet know how to do. So what I need to do is have a discussion with her and try and show her that there are some things to learn here and she's going to need some coaching. Well, then the next thing I need to do in preparing for coaching is just to get it organised. Organise a time, place, and when you're doing that, you've got to think about policies and procedures. So with Betty Davis, member of the 8 o'clock service, there might not be too much I need to think about with her. There might be lots of times I can do it. But if, say, I was planning to coach a minor, a young person or a child to do this task, then there are safe ministry policies which would bear on that. I would have to organise for somebody else to be present and make sure it wasn't a private affair, and you might have to get parents' permission, that kind of thing. So you need to be aware of organisational policies and procedures in your organising of coaching. Now, finally, for more complex tasks, it may be you need to identify more specifically what the coaching needs are and really nail this down. So, for example, if the need is not just for the working of the sound desk on the Sunday, but for the whole setup of the sound system, it may be you need a list of the different specific things that need to be coached, and you need to come up with some kind of schedule. Okay, these are the kinds of things that go into preparing for coaching. And if you don't think about these things, you can really easily make a mistake. Like you just start trying to impromptu coach somebody to do something, and then you realise there's not enough time, so you rush it and it doesn't get done well. Coaching requires some forethought. The second element of coaching is to actually do the coaching. Well, how do you do that? Well, this is where there are a whole range of what are called micro skills that go into being a good coach. Once you get the hang of them, you do them instinctively, but at first you need to learn them. Some of you will already be good at some of these things, some of you won't. Let me take you through, though, a few steps that are normally involved in coaching. The first thing you need to do as you're actually coaching is to explain the purpose of coaching. It's funny how rarely people actually do this. People take it for granted that people know where these skills fit in and why they matter. But very often people don't. Say somebody signs up, they're willing to do something on the roster. We mustn't take it for granted that they know why we do that thing. Coaching is an opportunity not just to teach somebody a skill, but to show them how a skill fits in to the mission of the organisation, the life of the church. It's kind of theologically understood. It's the same logic of when Paul talks about the body with its many members. Part of the purpose of that metaphor is to show people that each of their tasks, each of their roles has a place within a wider whole which is terribly important. So if I'm teaching Betty Davis to work the sound desk, before we get started, there's space for just a couple of sentences of introduction. Now, Betty, I just want to remind you, in case you hadn't realised, working the sound desk is a really important role because the quality of sound affects the quality of singing, and that has an impact on the whole experience of church for people. If people are distracted by the speakers, then that's what they're concentrating on. But if things are working, then they can concentrate on the words, they can concentrate on God. Just those few sentences will give Betty a sense of the importance and value of the skill she's about to learn. Okay, the second part of coaching is to just explain and to demonstrate the specific skills you're coaching. So I say, now, Betty, let me show you how to use this sound desk. We'll start over here. This is the on-off switch, on-off. So the first thing you want to do is switch it on and off. Do you want to have a go at that, Betty? That's something that happens here. So I demonstrate it and then I give her a go. I'll come back to that. Then I move around the sound desk, explaining and demonstrating the different bits. In order to do this, she may need to know some things. So one of the things you've got to do in coaching is to communicate the knowledge that is actually required in coaching. Does Betty need to understand all the workings of the sound desk? No. But might she need to understand what balance and gain mean? She might. You might need to explain that to her. Otherwise, when something goes wrong, she won't have any ability to improvise and do something different. Well, as I'm explaining, one of the micro skills that you just need to get into the habit of doing is checking the person you're coaching's understanding. Betty, did you see what I did there? Do you understand that? Do you have any questions about that? I'm providing opportunities for her to ask questions. That's critical. So I'm checking her understanding, providing opportunities to ask questions. So Betty, you've seen me adjust the balance on this. That's clear to you? Yeah? Great. Do you have any questions about that? No? Okay. Why don't you have a go at it yourself? For somebody to learn a skill, they can't just watch it, right? When you're just learning ideas, you can perhaps just take them in. But in order to learn a skill, you actually have to do it. You can't just observe it. Skills are learned by practice. Okay, Betty, so we've done 3 things so far. We've done the on-off switch, the volume, and the balance control. Do you want to have a go at this? Well, then Betty has a go. And what happens? She does part of it well, but she gets part of it not quite right. Here's another key skill in coaching. What do you do when that happens? Well, what you do is you provide feedback, and you provide encouraging feedback, but also critical feedback. Betty, great. I can see that you did that with the on-off switch just right, and you got the volume control right. That's excellent, but you haven't really understood, I don't think you've really understood the balance thing yet. Or perhaps, did you not quite get it? She's feeding back at the whole time. Betty, you've almost got it. Here's a different way to do it. Betty, you've almost got it. I just want to show you again how you do the balance thing, because that wasn't quite right. Very close, but not quite. You see how what I'm doing is just a bit different to what you did? Oh, yes, I see that. Okay, do you want to have another go at it? The key to feedback, the key to coaching, is to help somebody know that they are getting it, help somebody know that they are getting there, not show them that you don't expect to get it all first time, give them encouragement and support, but make sure they are actually moving in the right direction, right? It's of no real help to somebody to just tell them they're doing great when they're not. So it's this balance between finding things to affirm and encourage and making them loud and finding, but needing to still point out where they need to improve. A good rule of thumb, by the way, is that people need about 7 times more encouragement than they need criticism. Okay? So think of that ratio. Try and say 7 positive things to every 1 critical thing. It's very hard to do. It doesn't always work like that, but that's something to keep in mind. So these are the skills that are going on in coaching. You're explaining the purpose, then you explain and demonstrate the skills. You communicate the knowledge they need, and then as you go, you've got to check their understanding, provide them with opportunities to ask questions, and especially to practice the skill, and then provide feedback. And it's like a spiral. The first time they do it, it's not so great. You give them feedback, keep understanding. Next time they're doing it, they're getting closer, and you're going round and round until finally they're in a space where they don't need anything more from you. They know what they need to know, and they've had enough practice to keep improving on themselves. You don't need to get somebody when you're coaching them to a point of perfection, to even the point you're up to. You just need to get them into this space where their learning takes on a momentum of its own, and there's nothing they're missing in order to keep getting better. We can talk about that further at some point, and that's something to reflect on in your coaching report. But coaching doesn't finish there. There is a final step, again, easily forgotten, easily missed, which is you need to follow up on the coaching afterwards. What does that mean? Well, the first thing it means is you just need to monitor the progress with the new skills this person is making. Sometimes it can seem like somebody has got something, but actually they haven't. And it pretty quickly becomes clear that they haven't quite got it yet. So Betty, at the end of our coaching session, she looks like she's got all the different bits for working the sound desk, but the next week, even though she's got some things, it's really clear she's still missed some things. Now, monitoring progress is different with different skills. If somebody's reading the Bible in public, it will be fairly easy to monitor their progress. But if they're, say, working on a database that you don't see day to day, you may have to explore different possibilities for monitoring progress. But you just got to think about, how am I going to check in after the coaching to make sure it's worked and that this person is still improving? And if they're not, or if they do need help, you've got to think about what assistance are they going to require? How are you going to keep doing this? A good way to do this is just to set up some expectations when you're doing the actual coaching. So as I've come to the end of my session with Betty, I say, now Betty, it's really easy to forget some of these things. So what I'd like to do is to check in with you again in a week, and then 2 weeks after that, and you show me that you're still doing these well. You might not need it. That'll be great. That's fine. But we're just going to make sure we do it just in case some things are slipping. You see how that'll make it easier and doesn't make her feel embarrassed? Much easier than a month down the track going, oh, Betty, what's happened? What are you doing? We learned this. That's not going to work. Now, in certain circumstances, following up on coaching will also mean reporting progress to an appropriate person. So, for example, if you've been tasked to coach somebody to do something by someone else, you'll need to report to them. I won't talk about this at great length, but one of the things to think about following coaching is, who else needs to know about what's gone on? Are there things that need to be communicated to others? Fundamentally, though, what you're trying to do is to, as you go on from coaching, is to identify problems that emerge or difficulties and rectify them. Very few of us are perfect coaches, and no one is a perfect student. And lots of people will kind of get it, then not get it. Get it, then not get it. Skills take some time to learn. So one of the things to being a really good coach is to be willing to keep going on after it and to not be too frustrated if it doesn't work straight away. Okay, so they're the 3 keys to coaching. Prepare properly, coach well, and make the effort to follow up. Prepare properly, coach well, and make the effort to follow up. I hope that's been helpful. The readings and assignments will go over this ground in a bit more detail. You won't have learned the skills of coaching by me just explaining them. Hopefully it's a good explanation, but you won't have learned them just by me explaining them, because it's a skill. You only learn by doing it. So I encourage you to go and practice beyond the assignment you've got to do, but use that, and I hope it's a useful and fruitful unit. Goodbye.